I'm a 31-year-old woman, and I have two younger sisters, who we'll call Sarah and Emma for this story. Sarah is just a couple of years younger than me. She's 30, and Emma is the youngest at 27. Now, Emma and I haven't been on great terms for a while now, and it all started with a big blow-up we had a few years back. It all happened during a Christmas party. That year, my mom wasn't feeling well. She was really under the weather. She usually hosted our family Christmas, but because she was sick, she asked me to take over. I was nervous but excited because it was my first time hosting the big family Christmas party. I wanted everything to be perfect. My husband and I spent days planning and setting everything up. We decorated our house with lights and ornaments, cooked loads of food, and even planned some fun games. On the day of the party, all our relatives came over, and they were all praising how nicely everything was set up. It felt good because we had really worked hard. But Emma, she wasn't in a praising mood. For some reason, she started to pick on everything. It started with small jokes about the decorations, and then moved on to the food. I can't remember all the things she said, but her words were sharp and meant to sting. She kept this up as the evening went on, and I tried to ignore her, hoping she would stop. But she didn't. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. Her constant mocking was ruining the mood, and I was getting really upset. So I confronted her. I told her if she couldn't say anything nice, then maybe she should just leave. Well, that confrontation turned into a big argument right in the middle of the party. Voices were raised, and harsh words were exchanged. In the end, Emma decided to leave, and the atmosphere of the party just wasn't the same after that. Since that night, things have been pretty strained between us. We see each other at family gatherings like birthdays and other holidays, but we barely talk. Emma gives me the cold shoulder, and I just try to avoid any more conflict by keeping my distance. It's sad because we used to be closer before all this happened, but that Christmas party really changed our relationship. It's tough when family doesn't get along, especially over something that happened during what was supposed to be a happy occasion. Since that rocky Christmas party, our parents have tried a few times to mend the rift between Emma and me, but their approach was kind of frustrating for me. Instead of asking Emma to apologize for her behavior that day, they pushed me to be the one to reach out to her. They kept saying that since I was the oldest, I should be more mature and not let small disagreements ruin our relationship. Sarah, however, totally had my back. She agreed that Emma's behavior at the party was out of line, and she felt that anyone in my shoes would have reacted the same way I did. The thing is, Sarah and I have always known that Emma was treated differently by our parents. They kind of let her get away with a lot more than they ever did with us. Emma was the baby of the family, and it seemed like she could do no wrong in their eyes. Even when she acted out or was rude in public, our parents would just laugh it off and hardly ever told her off. Sarah and I were brought up to be much more disciplined. We knew better than to behave like Emma because we understood there would be consequences. But Emma? It was like she was raised by entirely different rules, and this made her pretty difficult to deal with as we got older. This long-standing difference in how we were treated has been a big part of why Emma turned out to be quite challenging and why our relationship has been so strained. Despite our efforts, Sarah and I struggled to connect with Emma and help her improve her behavior. We both tried to guide her, hoping she might change, but it was challenging because Emma was very stubborn and often rude. Her attitude didn't just affect our family dynamics, it also impacted her professional life. Unfortunately, Emma didn't receive the same indulgence in the workplace as she did at home from our parents. She was fired from several jobs due to her rudeness towards coworkers and sometimes even customers. As Emma grew into adulthood, her difficult nature became well known, which tarnished her reputation significantly. She found it hard to maintain friendships because of her unpleasant demeanor, and eventually, even Sarah and I reached our limits. After another heated argument, we decided to stop trying to fix things. It became clear that Emma wasn't going to change. She was too self-centered, always placing herself above others. We were all adults, and Sarah and I felt we were too old to keep dealing with such disruptive behavior. We chose not to force a relationship with Emma just to appease our parents. This decision stood firm until last year when Sarah's life took a happy turn. She married her longtime boyfriend, Mandy. They had been together for 7 years, and during that time, I had grown quite close to him too while they were dating. The wedding was a big event for our family, and it brought up a lot of emotions, not just about the celebration, but also about family ties and how we navigate them moving forward. The bond I had with Andy, Sarah's now husband, was incredibly strong. We shared many interests and a similar outlook on life, which often led Sarah and my husband to tease that Andy and I were more like siblings than Sarah and I were. We understood each other well and always enjoyed each other's company. So, when Andy decided to propose to Sarah, I was thrilled for them both. To show my support and affection, I chose to pay for their wedding venue, intending this gesture as my personal wedding gift to them. This arrangement was meant to be kept just between us, but during the wedding planning, Sarah ended up discussing it with our mom, who then learned about my contribution. At the time, this didn't seem like a big deal. However, it has recently started causing unexpected complications. When Emma got engaged a few months ago, she, aware of my gift at Sarah's wedding, expected the same from me. She approached me, apologizing for her past behavior, including the infamous Christmas party incident and her general attitude throughout our lives. Despite this apology, her expectation that I also pay for her wedding venue has put me in a difficult position. Our parents are now involved, suggesting that it would only be fair if I did the same for Emma as I did for Sarah. They believe that not extending the same generosity could be seen as favoritism or unfair treatment. This situation has made me reflect on family dynamics, forgiveness, and fairness. It's a tough spot because while Emma's recent efforts to reconcile are appreciated, they also seem intertwined with her expectations for her wedding, which complicates how genuine her apologies might be. Now, I have to decide whether to extend the same kind of support to Emma, balancing between fairness and my feelings about our past conflicts. After Emma apologized, I chose to forgive her, largely because it made family gatherings less awkward and it seemed like she was truly trying to make amends. Her desire for a fresh start as she planned her own wedding felt sincere, and as her sister, I wanted to support that change and give her the chance to prove she could improve our relationship. However, I didn't expect the situation to deteriorate so quickly after our initial reconciliation. Sarah had already reconciled with Emma by the time of her own wedding, but that was under different circumstances. Our parents had put a lot of emotional pressure on Sarah to include Emma in her special day. Sarah is naturally more gentle and accommodating than I am, so she eventually agreed to invite Emma. Before making her decision, Sarah discussed it with me, knowing that my past with Emma was more turbulent. I supported Sarah's decision to invite Emma. Sarah and Emma hadn't had any personal issues themselves. The strain was mostly between Emma and me. I didn't want to be the reason for any further family discord. By encouraging Sarah to invite Emma, I was trying to show that I wasn't holding grudges and was open to moving forward. I thought it was important not to appear as though we were excluding Emma unfairly, aiming instead to maintain harmony and show a united front as siblings. This gesture of goodwill was part of our effort to keep the peace within the family, emphasizing that despite past conflicts, we could still come together for important occasions and try to foster a positive atmosphere. Emma's behavior at Sarah's wedding was surprisingly subdued and respectful, which was a pleasant change from the past. She didn't seek attention or act out, choosing instead to participate quietly and leave early. Her demeanor at the event hinted that perhaps she had matured during the time we weren't speaking, which encouraged me to reconsider my stance towards her. Earlier this year, when Emma reached out to make amends, I was more receptive to her efforts. Our subsequent interactions were sporadic, but they were positive and gave me a sense of reconnecting with her, almost as if I was getting to know a completely different person. She seemed genuinely committed to showing that she had moved past her previous bratty and entitled behavior. During our conversations, Emma also shared details about her new relationship with her fiancé, Hank. They had met through a dating app and quickly fell deeply in love, moving in together within a month of their first meeting. Their relationship progressed rapidly, and they felt so certain about each other that they decided to get married after just a year of living together. This whirlwind romance seemed to be a significant part of her new, more grounded life, suggesting that her personal growth was intertwined with her new partnership. This transformation in her life and attitude contributed to my decision to forgive her and try to start anew, hoping that this change was both sincere and lasting. I had my reservations about Emma and Hank's quick move towards marriage, but seeing their happiness, I chose to keep any doubts to myself. Their relationship seemed genuine, and they were clearly in love, which was what mattered most. However, the situation became complicated when Emma approached me with a request similar to what I had done for Sarah's wedding. She asked if I could cover the cost of her wedding venue. Given the unique circumstances around Sarah's wedding, where my contribution was a personal gesture of support and not a precedent for future obligations, I felt that the same gesture for Emma wasn't appropriate. so I declined her request. Emma's reaction was swift and stark. She ended our call abruptly without any further conversation. I was surprised by the sudden disconnect, but nothing prepared me for what followed. About an hour later, my phone rang again. It was my parents, and they were extremely upset. They told me Emma had called them in tears, upset because my decision not to fund her wedding venue meant she had to reevaluate her wedding budget. My parents were not just upset, they were furious. They argued that I was being unfair and showing favoritism towards Sarah by not extending the same financial support to Emma. The situation escalated quickly, with emotions running high. It was clear that Emma's call to them had influenced their perspective, and they were now putting pressure on me to reconsider my decision in order to keep the family peace and ensure equal treatment for both sisters. Emma's assumption that I would automatically pay for her wedding venue, just because I did so for Sarah, placed me in an uncomfortable position. When I declined her request, Emma reacted by accusing me of playing favorites and being deliberately unkind. This wasn't just about the venue, it was a reflection of our strained relationship over the years. Sarah had always been kind and considerate towards me, which naturally drew me closer to her. Emma, on the other hand, had a history of being difficult and often tried to belittle Sarah and me. This pattern wasn't new. Even during the Christmas party incident, Emma tried to undermine my efforts in front of our family. Typically, Sarah and I would let such behavior slide to avoid drama and not give Emma the attention she seemed to crave. However, the time I stood up to her at the Christmas party marked a turning point where I no longer tolerated her negativity, resulting in years of silence between us. This history made it clear why I felt closer to Sarah, and I didn't feel guilty about acknowledging that preference. Faced with pressure from my parents who were upset over my decision, I had to stand firm. I explained to them that my decision wasn't merely about not wanting to pay, it was a consequence of Emma's long-standing behavior and our rocky relationship. I made it clear that they couldn't guilt-trip me into financing Emma's wedding venue, emphasizing that financial support was not an obligation, especially under such strained circumstances. This was about setting boundaries and not capitulating to unfair expectations, no matter the familial pressure. Emma and I had just started reconciling, but we still had a long way to go before our relationship was actually fixed, and I was not paying for her wedding for no reason. I also explained to them that I had known Andy for a much longer time than Hank, whom I had met only twice at lunch with Emma, and both times we had barely even said anything to each other. But with Sarah and Andy, it was really different because he was also a good friend of mine, not just my sister's partner. So I treated that as a wedding gift for them. They didn't even have to ask for it because I wanted to do that for them. But with the niece and Hank, I don't think I owed it to them to pay for the wedding venue or even contribute to their wedding in any way, shape, or form. I could buy them any gift that they wanted from the registry, like the other guests, but I wasn't going to shell out more money to pay for her venue. It sounded mean, but to be perfectly honest, she and I were just not as close as Sarah and I are. And I don't even know her fiancé, unlike Andy. But my parents were not happy with that explanation and decided they were going to fight with me until I agreed to cover for Emma. They started arguing with me and said that I couldn't pick favorites because it was problematic, and they didn't want me to hurt Emma just a few months before her wedding, because that would mean the family falling apart once again. And they didn't want that. They told me that they had very narrowly avoided having problems during Sarah's wedding and had made her invite Emma so nobody would ask questions so we could at least all put up a united front, and they were not going to let me ruin that this time. So it became very clear to me that it was more important for them to keep up the appearance of us being a normal and happy family. And that was even more ridiculous to me. So I doubled down on my decision and I told them I didn't care what other people said. All relatives and others could gossip about us if they wanted to. But the fear of that wasn't going to make me pay for the venue. My mother almost started crying after arguing in circles with me for a while, and my dad told me that I was being incredibly selfish and entitled. I almost started laughing when he said that, because it was obviously Emma who was being entitled here when I told him to elaborate. He said that it was entitled of me to expect the family to still keep in touch with me if I wasn't even prepared to act like it and step up and be there for my little sister. I had to try really hard to take them seriously at that point, since it was really obvious to me that they were grasping at straws to get me to agree. So I told my parents that they were free to cut me off because there was no way I would be contributing to Emma's wedding, and that means sacrificing my relationship with them. So I'm willing to do it. I was honestly just getting sick of them, constantly trying to manipulate us into going easy on Emma. This time they were asking for way too much, and I was putting my foot down. So if that made them mad, then they'd just have to deal with it or cut me off like they had said they would. I wasn't going to fight it anymore, because that would just lead to more arguments. And I didn't want that because I was just sick of fighting with either of them or Emma. And even if we didn't fight and decided to make up, that would lead to more manipulation in the future, which is also not something I wanted. So they could either have a relationship with me on my terms now, which is sweet. I've given them a very clear choice, and now it was up to them if they wanted to still keep fighting with me for Emma, or they could just let it go and not jeopardize their relationship with me. So they obviously chose the former because to them it was more important to spoil her than to be actually good parents to all of their kids. They could stop me on the call that day and said that they never wanted to speak to me again. I only wish that they really hadn't spoken to me after that. After they hung up that day, I didn't think they would call me back anytime soon because the fight had been a bad one. But they called me the very next day to tell me that they had made up their mind about what they wanted to do and said that they were going to cut me off. Since I wasn't acting in the best interests of my family, that was just a fancy way for them to say that they thought I was being selfish. I believe that they had thought that the threat of them cutting me off would scare me into contributing to Emma's wedding. But like I said, I didn't care anymore. So I told them to go right ahead and even offer to block them myself so they wouldn't have to put in any extra effort in order to cut me off. They were really mad at me and told me that I was a really selfish brat and I was going to regret this in future when I didn't have any family to think about me. I didn't pay much mind to them because honestly, the drama was getting under my skin and I hadn't signed up for any of this. So I told them to stop bothering me because no threats were going to make me contribute to the wedding and they might as well give up trying, since at this point, they were only just making huge fools out of themselves. My parents stopped calling after that, but there was always Emma to replace them, and she started calling me to tell me that the way I was treating her was really mean-spirited. She even tried to play the victim and said that the reason she had always been mean to me and Sarah while we were growing up was because we would treat her like an outsider in our own private little club. And that made her feel alienated. Honestly, that was just a bunch of baloney because we always wanted to include her in things, but she was the one who would turn up her nose at us, and that's how we started treating her like an outsider because she would act like one. So I was not buying the whole victim thing, and I reminded her that she couldn't just gaslight me into believing her BS I blocked her personal number. But she just found other ways to contact me, like from her fiance's phone or from her friend's phone, numbers. And I didn't even have those saved, so I couldn't even ignore all of that. I was getting impatient because I just couldn't tolerate this level of annoyance. And so the last time that we spoke a couple of days ago, I said something and that really hurt her yet again. She was hopping on about how I was hurting her feelings and that I owed her this because I had contributed to Sarah's wedding. So I snapped on the phone and told us I owed her nothing because she wasn't as close to me as Sarah was, since she had never treated me with respect or love. And she always took us all for granted because that's how she was raised. I told her that had she ever bothered to put in the time and effort to be nice to us, then I would have gladly contributed to her wedding and she wouldn't even have had to ask. I would have just done it. But it's really tacky the way that she has been behaving for the past couple of days and acting as if I owe it to her to pay for the venue. I told her that her behavior has been nothing short of ridiculous and entitled, and it's getting on my nerves now. She still had a chance to back down and let this go, but instead she decided that she was going to argue with me and make things worse. She told me that the only reason she expected me to cover for the venue was because I had done it for Sarah. But she should have known that I was too insecure and jealous of her to let her have a beautiful wedding, because that would mean that all our relatives would only be talking about her wedding, and she would win again, of course. And we couldn't stand that, which is why we were not okay with her getting married the way that she wanted to. It was straight up just absurd because nobody thinks like that. We're all adults here except for her, I guess. So to retaliate, I told her that maybe the reason I didn't want to contribute to her wedding was just because I didn't like her. And also because I didn't want to throw away my money on a marriage that wouldn't even last long, given how she's completely crazy and can manage to drive anyone away. So it doesn't make sense for me to waste money on a short-lived marriage. She lost her mind after that and started screaming at me, but I didn't wait around to hear what she was saying and hung up. But things have become kind of chaotic after that because my parents and a couple of my other relatives have contacted me to tell me what I said was out of line, because now she's really miserable and believes that saying her fiancé they would leave her was a low blow. So I stay for telling my sister that her fiancé would leave her because of her crazy behavior. Update 1. Hi. So I went through the comments here, and most of the people here agree that I didn't say anything that was out of line. And if she didn't want me to lash out at her, then she probably shouldn't have been trying to insult me, even as she was trying to ask for help. And I guess it's true. 00, 18, 47, 04, 00, 19, 08, 12, unknown. I'm no reason to feel bad just because my parents and a couple of other relatives are supporting her. Sarah and Andy don't think I said anything wrong, and neither does my husband, and nor do most of you guys here. So I don't think I need to apologize to her for anything. I honestly just wish that they would understand this because things have gotten really out of hand. My parents are being constantly trying to get me so I can apologize to Emma and take back what I said because apparently she is hurt by that. I don't even understand why that's hurting her so much. If she has any faith in her relationship, then she won't let my words bother her. I don't even know them that well, so my comment should be pretty much irrelevant to her. The only reason that I can think of is that she isn't really confident about her relationship, and that's why she's letting my words get to her. Because I guess I hit a nerve with what I said. It's just a thing. But it might be true given how she has reacted to it. I can't think of a single other reason why someone would take this so hard. It might be for attention, but I think she receives enough of that from all parents already. And she hasn't gone public with this yet, so it seems unlikely. Either way, I'm definitely not going to apologize to her because she doesn't deserve it. So she can continue to cry about this. It's not like she's going to cancel her wedding just because I'm not paying for the venue. That's still going to happen. So I really just don't understand what the fuss is all about. I have been feeling really bad about the way that my family was treating me just because I refused to go along with what Emma was telling me. But now it's clearer to me than ever that my parents don't care about anybody apart from her. She's always going to be their first priority no matter how old she gets. They will continue to enable her until the very end. So it doesn't matter what I say. She's just going to remain the same person, incapable of change. Update 2. Okay, so the invitations to Emma's wedding were recently just sent out. And guess what? I didn't receive one, and neither did Sarah. Now I can understand why she wouldn't want to invite me. But the fact that she didn't even invite Sarah, even though she had attended her wedding, is just ridiculous. When it was Sarah who didn't want to invite Emma to her wedding, parents made sure that they talked her into it and made them reconcile. But all of a sudden, they don't care about appearances because clearly what Emma wants is far more important than what Sarah wants at her wedding. The double standards, honestly, just sickening. And it makes me so mad. Sarah and I met for lunch the other day, and she told me that all parents had even texted her to let her know that she could still get an invite, as long as she promised to cut me off and never speak to me again until I apologized. She told them to leave her alone and said that they were the worst parents on the planet. So they started arguing with her and accused her of being my minion. They were really vicious and said that at this point, they only had one daughter, and that was Emma. Apparently, Sarah and I are really selfish and don't deserve to be related to them because we are clearly never going to make any sacrifices for our family. It's ridiculous how entitled they sound, and they don't even realize it because they think letting them walk all over us is the only way that we can prove that we are indeed loyal to our family. It's crazy how their minds work, and the mental gymnastics required to make us the bad guys for simply not wanting to waste our time, money, and effort on someone who will never appreciate them. We have given Emma several chances to improve her behavior and act like a normal person around us, but she just refuses to grow up and be a decent person. So I don't understand why we are expected to put up with it constantly and pretend that she's a nice human being when she obviously isn't. It's not our fault that she never learned how to be kind to other people and not treat them like utter garbage. And the credit for all of that goes to our parents because they made sure that they raised their youngest daughter to be the most insufferable and annoying person on the planet at any given moment. They were the ones who spoiled her. And I would honestly say that they ruined her life by making us so entitled because now nobody likes her and she can barely even hold down a job thanks to her horrible attitude. They certainly didn't do her any favors and are still continuing to enable this behavior. It's just sad and pathetic at this point. Update 3. So, they're married now. Emma and Hank got married a few days ago, and obviously I was not invited, but I did see a lot of photos because it was all over my social media, and I realized that they got married in my parents' backyard. Probably because I didn't pay for the venue, but they seemed to have fun, so I don't even know what they were also mad about earlier. They could have just adjusted their plans accordingly, instead of throwing a tantrum and making a big deal out of nothing. But, well, what's done is done now. I'm just happy they're married and I like them. Don't want to waste any more of my time talking about them to other people, which they did at their wedding. A lot of relatives reached out to me afterwards to ask if it was true that I had promised Emma that I would contribute to her wedding by covering the expenses for the venue. But I backed out at the very last moment, which is why they had to disinvite me and also change the plans to get married in my parents' backyard for free. So that's the version that they are going with. But it was pointless because I obviously told my relatives the truth and they believe me because everyone knows about the reputation that Emma and my parents have. So they were not going to buy that version anyway. Their attempt to save face was pretty useless, if you ask me. I haven't spoken to any of them ever since the last fight that we had, and I don't really think that we can ever get back on good terms again after this. Way too much time has passed, and honestly, Unless they can really prove to us that they have changed, I don't see myself having a relationship with any of them in the future. Sarah and I have tolerated a lot of disrespect over the years, but that has finally come to an end now. Earlier, my parents could just manipulate us and guilt trip us into forgiving her. But now that we are not on speaking terms with them either, they can't do that to us. And I, for one, am glad about it because sometimes things just become too much to handle. And that's exactly what happened with my family. Sure, it's not like I don't miss speaking to my parents because we did have a lot of good times, and they were nice to us sometimes as well. But in comparison to what happened recently, I feel like cutting them out of my life was the best decision that I could have made. I have been a little down in the dumps the day the photos of the wedding were posted, but I soon realized that I wasn't wanted among those people anyway, so it was best for me to just stay away. And so that's what I'm going to do now.